Hi, this is Ryan from Springville Online, xcannabis.com, so on and so forth. A lot of things going on right now, and sometimes it's just good for me to vent. Sometimes, it gets built up inside. And, I don't know. People write, people make journals, people video blog, people sing in the shower maybe, or maybe they write songs, or maybe they write poetry, but people need to vent. I feel that's like a necessary medicine in life. And stress is a very, it can be a very dangerous illness, a dangerous condition that causes illness. You've got to vent sometimes. So I vent sometimes, and I try to keep it non-personal, as much as I can, and sometimes it does get that way, but I try to keep it, beyond personal and more principle, more philosophy, more, parable. But anyway, the point of this is, just so much wrong emotion and shit going on in life, but and that just brings me back to this drug war thing. I think about it because so many people die, so many people, for one reason or another, are getting their doors broken down, guns put in their face, their dogs shot, their families terrorized, sometimes shot. People are being locked up in prison. Prison can sometimes be deadly and dangerous, and if nothing else, what kind of life is that? And for a victimless crime of possessing a simple plant. I am against prohibition, but I am not in favor of new prohibitions. But that's what I love about this world. People who support I-502, a lot of them believe in a lot of the same things I believe about prohibition, how it's wrong and useless and, needs to get, voted out or removed from our lives. But prohibition, especially of cannabis, of something that grows naturally out of the ground, is just, anti-freedom. I can't describe it any better way. But the I-502 proposal is, okay, we'll get rid of criminal penalties on an ounce. We will, as a token, say that we want to regulate cannabis and put it in a commercial environment and tax the living shit out of it up to 75%. Well, it will be at least 75% because 25% from grower to dispenser, 25% from dispenser to consumer. So, what the hell else? There's a threefold tax on it anyway. The grower to the dispenser, and then the dispenser pays 25, and then the consumer pays 25. They all pay 25 anyway. 25% equals a 75% tax from start to finish on the stuff, and it, is in conflict with what Governor Gregoire was saying, about how it's in conflict with state or with federal law. She had to veto the provisions for dispensaries in SB 5073. They promised all these things. Okay, if you give up your rights, as a doctor, because doctors were excluded from any penalties from the law before SB 5073, and it does not, give them that immunity anymore after SB 5073 passed, and then so the doctor-patient relationship got screwed up, and then the serving a patient at any given time provision in Section 402 of SB 5073 changed, so people don't have that, defense in court or that ability to, serve one patient at any time under state law. So they were sacrificing all these things for SB 5073 because they thought that they were going to get dispensaries in the end, and this was promised by everybody. There was ACLU, they had nothing bad to say about it. SB 5073, Normal had nothing bad to say about SB 5073. All the big players, ACLU and everybody, and we're promoting it, and not giving any kind of solid, hey, best case scenario, worst case scenario. They were just giving it as if though it was best case scenario. SB 5073 is the best thing since, sliced apple pie. And it turned out to be a real shitwalk for Washington. Excuse my language. But it really did. It ended up being detrimental to, rights and progress. It went backwards. And she did veto the dispensary, so everything that everybody was sacrificing for, making all these political deals, in the end they got screwed and they didn't get what they wanted so badly as legal dispensaries. And that's why everybody was supporting it. And in the end, it didn't happen. And there was this big thing from the, district attorneys and everything, and all these letters from the U.S. attorney and this and bullshit and that bullshit, all this advice to Governor Gregoire. She vetoed it. Well, I think what's going to happen with I-502 is it'll probably pass. It'll probably win in November and pass, and Washington will have legal weed and all that. But I think that it'll end up in court or litigation of some sort, or some sort of intervention where it is dropped and there is no dispensaries, no state-operated dispensaries like is proposed, because it requires this permitting and that permitting and this oversight from this group and this or this bureaucracy anyway. And if it's going to do all that, if it's required that it has to go in that in that incremental step-by-step way, I don't think they're going to get dispensaries. I really don't. I think there's not going to be any legal grows. There's not going to be any dispensaries. You're not going to be able to share a joint. There's no gifting as defined in the law. Sharing a joint would be a felony. It would be distribution. Just as well as it could be now, but even more so, because it's defined in such a way that it makes these restrictions, unless it's regulated by the state and properly certified and inspected and permitted and all that. And if you look at SB 5073 and you compare it to what we're seeing in this I-502, you're not going to get the legal dispensaries, you're not going to get the legal grows, you're going to have a lot of restrictions on your lifestyle. And if you drive a car and you're a medical patient or a regular consumer of cannabis and you get pulled over and they have reason to suspect you're under the influence of whatever, alcohol, marijuana, whatever, but they, say, hey, your blinker was out and you swerved, or you were going too slow in the, in a 55 mile an hour zone, you were going, 45, and so you were, obstructing traffic, or you were going too fast, speeding, or, these things make me believe that maybe you are impaired, that, you're not paying attention. It must mean you're distracted because of impairment. Or they get up to your car and they claim that they smell marijuana. Well, who says they don't? Who's to say that they don't smell marijuana on you? There's no camera or device that can record and identify smells. So it's just the police word against yours. There's a lot of different red eyes, a lot of reasons why they can test your blood. And if you test over 5 nanograms, there's no defense for you in court. Right now, there is a defense. You can say, hey, I was not impaired, and the prosecution has to prove impairment, field sobriety test or whatever. And, if you, even if you pass these field sobriety tests after I-502, and you're over 5 nanograms per milliliter of blood of active THC, even if you haven't smoked for 5 days, but you're, say, at a 6 or a 7 or an 8, you go to jail. And there's no defense. It doesn't matter if you were impaired or not. There is no defense. And so I think that gives people, police motivation to go after DUIDs more after I-502 passes than before, because not every case is a win-win for the cops. If you go in and you get a good lawyer or whatever, you end up, really presenting your case well, and you win in front of the judge. People have been, have had charges dismissed and been found not guilty for DUI because they were able to prove they weren't impaired in Washington in the past. There's several cases of this. There's a guy in Tri-Cities not long ago, last, I think, March, African-American guy, I forget his name though, but he, beat a case on DUI because he proved he wasn't impaired. But after I-502, that's not the case. And so a guy, Hatred42 on YouTube, it's H and then the number 8. Anyway, he's been, chatting with me about I-502, and he says that the police don't have any motive to arrest people for marijuana. They got bigger things to deal with. This is something he said in his video back in February, and then I responded to it. But he said, police don't have, motivation. They've got things like rape and violence and terrorists and God knows what out there. So they don't have time for messing with marijuana people. People aren't going to be arrested for DUI. There's no reason for that. What's their motivation? And I had to remind him, even in my last video, and he still doesn't seem to hear me on this, the police have many motivations for the arresting of marijuana people, whether it be for DUI or possession. Look up federal anti-drug grants. Just look that up, and the Young Turks broadcast about this not long ago. In fact, I'm going to play that for you here in just a minute. But look up civil asset forfeiture and look up federal anti-drug grants that they give to police stations. And the police compete for these grants because they're not given to every police station. They're given to only those who perform in getting enough arrests for this one particular issue, which is marijuana. So do you think the feds are going to just not worry about Washington anymore since Washington isn't criminalizing marijuana possession? Or do you think the feds are going to come into the state and talk to the legislature or talk to the cops even? I mean, it is illegal to drive impaired, but if they said to the police stations, hey, the DEA or whoever it is that provisions these funds comes into the police stations and says, hey, I'm going to give you X amount of dollars for X amount of DUI arrests for marijuana. If you're finding these people are driving under the influence of marijuana, we're going to give you $10,000 or $20,000 for every one of your arrests. Something like that. I mean, there's endless money that they're willing to put into this. They've proven that already. Why is the federal government so anti-marijuana? That's not even the question. The fact is that they're well funded, and they have no problem giving the states money to enforce federal law or a federal dislike. I mean, it's already against the law, but the feds hate it so badly that they'll put trillions of dollars into eradicating a plant that is not going to go away. And it seems like they're even involved in promoting the plant. The CIA and other people who have been accused of running drugs are from the government, and they're high-ranking people. And planes crashing and CIA planes crashing in South America with like 2,000 kilos of cocaine and things like that. So we know that prohibition is a farce. Whatever their motivations are, whether it be big business, big pharma, whoever, a prison industrial complex, we all know they're in on it. But it doesn't matter what their motivation is. It matters that they're well funded and they're against it so badly that they will improvise at will to get those arrests and to keep, all those people in prison and to keep those people, on a rotation in those prisons and makes those prison people a lot of money. And those prison people put a lot of money into campaigning, I'll guarantee. You just look it up. And there's a lot more to it than that, but I think the cops are very motivated. Civil asset forfeiture, federal anti-drug grants, there's a lot of reasons for it. But before I let you go here, I'm just going to play the video and it's going to cut out. So you can visit us at www.xcannabis.com. And I want to encourage you to do something. I want you to really get to know your elderly relatives and friends. Spend time with them. Sometimes they don't smell the best, or sometimes they don't remember the best, or sometimes they don't, keep up with the conversation the best. But let me just tell you that the treasure is really in the stories that they have. And my grandma gets accused of sometimes being negative or grumpy, but I'll tell you something. The stories she has of, riding motorcycles and, crossing the border from Canada to the United States and getting to know a new state, and all of the different travels she has done. Went to England several times. All of the stories and just the good times and times that memories that we've created together that she remembers so vividly, that just mean so much to me, and I think it could mean a lot to you. But a lot of people don't want to have the time for elderly. Some people, they're only there. They're fair weather friends. When times are good, they're there. When times are bad, they're gone. And unfortunately, that's what happens to a lot of elderly people, and they end up alone in life. And just think about it. Think about it really hard, because we're all going to get old. For the most part, all of us are going to be there someday. And rest in peace for those who have passed already, or those who will pass early, and for those of us who will pass late. But let's think about that. About how life could be for us, and how life should be, for people. There was a time in this country where we didn't have the government to take care of anything for us. We took care of ourselves. And people were a lot closer back then, in my opinion. And, that song, I Miss Mayberry, or whatever, that Mayberry song, and I miss that too. I tell you what, my dad kind of raised me that way in small towns, and, modest life, and we worked hard, and we played hard, and we had good times. But I miss that. And I miss people taking care of each other. And my dad was one person who always obligated to take care of the elderly, to take care of my grandma who's living with us now. He always promised her she'd never go to a rest home. And, I'm just fulfilling my dad's promise the best I can, because I do respect the elderly, and I do love their stories, and I just hope that you're able to, pay attention to your elderly people. You can find some time in your life. And rest in peace to my Aunt Sheila. She just passed away, and she's going to be missed. Glad she's not suffering anymore.
It turns out that police officials are increasingly ignoring violent crimes, and they are using all of their resources to arrest and prosecute people who have possession of marijuana. And there are significant incentives to do so. All right, so the Huffington Post actually did a really great report on this, and they lay out all of the different ways that police departments, local police departments, profit from arresting and prosecuting people who have possession of marijuana. So the first thing is that they get federal anti-drug grants, okay? And the way a police department is able to get those grants is if they can show that they have made a significant amount of arrests for marijuana and drug possession. All right, and this is a competitive thing. It's not like all police departments get it. You get this grant if you can show that you have arrested enough people.
All right, first of all, instantly, look at the incentive structure that they give.
Right.
Like, right or wrong, it's a real problem in your local community. It's not a problem in your local community. Who cares? You only get the money if you do our bidding, which is to arrest as many people for smoking marijuana and selling marijuana, etc., as possible. So, gee, I wonder why we got all these people locked up in jail, because they're literally getting paid to lock them up, and as much as possible. And then second of all, if you incentivize them to do that, obviously they're going to do that instead of other things.
Look, they're going to use all of their time and resources to arrest people when they know that arresting those individuals is going to mean that they're going to bring in money for doing so. So here's another example. When they suspect that someone might have possession of drugs, they can do something known as asset forfeiture. Okay, so for example, police can legally seize property from people merely suspected of drug crimes, and they can basically get a hold of the cash, and that cash goes back to the police department. It doesn't go back to the person who's arrested. When it comes to non-cash property, it's auctioned off, and that money goes back to the police department.
So, look, if you got raped...
listen one time! No! We don't care where you come from, shaman. Socialist. Back to the sea, right wing. Here, man. Rise! Can't take the way we rise above them war and strife. They tell them gangsta couldn't live no cowboy life.
The case of a woman in Chicago who was literally beaten to the point where she suffered a concussion. She woke up the following morning and she went to the police. The police didn't care, so she went and did her own investigation to find out who the attackers were. Then she went to the police and said, look, here are the attackers, the names of these people, where they live, please arrest them, arrest them. Finally, after bugging them, the Chicago police decided, all right, fine, we'll arrest these guys, but stop bitching about it.
Yeah, stop complaining that you're beaten unconscious. Look, it didn't involve drugs. Why would we care? In fact, what she should have done instead of all that is, they beat me near death. Plus, I saw them smoking a joint. Then the cops are like, okay, we jump in.
Gotta get those federal anti-drug grants.
Some of them war and strife. Me tell them gangsta couldn't live no cowboy life. Long gun put it down, shotgun put it down. Free man off run like water from pipe. Can't take the way we rise above them war and strife.